Hello Scrufftards, YouTubers and Botniks. Welcome to the Warzone. I'm Scruffy and this is Scruffy Tales. And the other day, Ukraine officially approved the Swedish assault vehicle armored personnel carrier, the PBV302, to be used and fielded in the war against Russia. And here you have it, posted on Ukraine's Ministry of Defense own website. The approval was granted for the delivery to the armed forces of Ukraine of a Swedish armored personnel carrier equipped with an aircraft cannon. I guess that's one way to phrase it. And the Ministry of Defense has authorized the delivery of the PBV302 Swedish-made armored personnel carrier. And like they point out, it's been used in combat operations in Bosnia and Kosovo. It has wide tracks, and the design of the vehicle allows for it to exert less force on the ground, in this example, than a tractor. And this enables the armored vehicle to traverse rough off-road terrain, as well as soft and unstable surfaces like mud and sand and snow. And it's also amphibious. You can use it to safely cross bodies of water. It has a 20mm autocannon in the turret. This is a old aircraft gun used in the old Swedish Tunnan fighter jet. And then when those aircraft were being taken out of service, they kept the guns and put them on these PBV302s, designed in the 60s, by the way. So it's an old vehicle, but I mean, throughout the Cold War, this was one of the best APCs in Europe. The PBV302 has an internal spall liner. What that means is you have basically a gap between the outer armor and the interior compartment. So when you're hit by heat munitions, that has a penetrator beam, a liquefied beam of metal, usually copper. When that hits the armor, you get spalling, that spray of molten liquefied metal. And since you have that small gap, that spall liner, that then catches most of the spray within the vehicle, and that protects the crew and troops in the troop compartment. And external ceramic elements. Now, that was the PBVs that was used in international missions, on UN missions for Sweden. They added armor packages to the vehicles that were used in international service, and very capable armor packages. It allowed the vehicles to survive RPG hits and what have you. But it was not, that's not part of the basic kit for these vehicles. So it's going to be interesting to see if Sweden provides these armor packages for the vehicles being deployed to Ukraine, or if they will get the standard version that basically is only designed to withstand heavy machine guns and will not be able to take a hit from an RPG. That said, the front armor is designed to withstand a direct impact, and this says 20mm artillery shell. No, that's a 20mm autocannon, the same kind of gun you have in the vehicle itself. So up front, it will be able to withstand multiple hits from a 20mm automatic cannon. So that's the basics of the vehicle, and it has now been approved to be used by the Ukraine army. So it's a bit unclear how many PBVs will be delivered to Ukraine. The speculation is somewhere between 80 to 120, but I saw a source that claimed it would be 239, but I'm not entirely sure of that. That maybe, since Sweden has promised to provide every PBV in the old storage areas. The total number may be 239, but many of them will not be in working condition, and some will be salvaged for spare parts to keep others operational. So I'm thinking that 80 to 120 is the more reasonable number. They were designed, built and designed in the 60s, designed, among other things, for mounted combat, allowing infantry to fight from hatches. As you can see here, you have 4 guys standing up in the hatches. That would be 8 in total, because you have a second hatch right behind them. And they provide flanking security for the vehicle. They can inform the crew if they spot enemy movements, if an enemy vehicle pops up somewhere, or if they spot enemy infantry with RPGs. They can tell the crew what's going on, and they can of course open fire on those enemy troops and subdue them and potentially kill them. So it adds protection to the vehicle, it adds survivability, and you know, allows the vehicle and the crew and the troops to spot enemy positions more easily. The hatches also allows the troops to take an active part in combat from the vehicle. And back in the day, and even in modern times with CV90s, that essentially uses almost basically the same tactics. You would drive up to the enemy, and the troops could fight from the vehicle, protected by the armor of the vehicle, and then they could engage targets point blank, basically, as you drove into the enemy positions. So it was designed to be a very aggressive vehicle, relying on very aggressive tactics. And on that note, rear doors, they were designed for as fast as possible dismounts back in the day. And they found that a rear hatch, electronic hatch, was too slow when it opened. So Sweden wanted rear doors that you basically could just kick open, and then everyone could jump out and get into the action right away. And you would get your troops more guns, shooting faster that way, instead of the vehicle standing still waiting for the hatch to fall down, and then everyone would stumble out. And it was semi-based on the M113. Sweden tested the M113, wasn't really satisfied, but kept 1 or 2 around anyways, and used them as a platform when they designed the PBV302. So it was kind of based on it, but still wasn't, because the idea was to build a vehicle that would outperform the M113, especially when it came to off-road capability and armor. So, and that is what they succeeded with. The PBV302 has better off-road capability and better protection than the M113, and it comes with a 20mm autocannon as standard. It's also amphibious, capably so. It can cross rivers, lakes, bodies of water without issue once you prepare it. And it's not like some Russian vehicle where 50% of the time the thing sinks. These things can float and can get across rivers and lakes if you prep them properly. They also have very good protection against artillery. I mean, a direct hit from a RPG may be a bit troublesome to handle, but machine guns, heavy machine guns, and especially artillery shrapnel, these vehicles should be able to handle just fine. And in international service, Sweden added additional armor packages to these vehicles, like we pointed out in the previous slide, which allowed them to survive hits from RPGs. And they did. They took hits from RPGs in UN service. And also 3 PBV302s took hits from ATGMs during the UN operations in former Yugoslavia. But the Swedish troops suffered not a single casualty despite being hit by anti-tank guided missiles while riding in PBV302s with these additional armor packages. So, with excellent off-road ability, fast dismounts, Carrying a 20mm autocannon and being well protected, these vehicles will more than likely be an excellent addition to Ukraine's forces that throughout the war has relied on the M113 to conduct assaults against Russian trench lines, a task the PBV302 was actually specifically designed for. It was designed to keep pace with the cheese wedge, the S-tank, the STRV-103. And the tactics back in the day was to have PBVs right next to S-tanks, and they would attack in tandem towards a position, firing their guns. Troops would be in the hatches, firing their guns as they approached and charged the enemy lines, and then dismounts would jump out the back and engage the enemy on foot and hunt them down in the trenches. Or remain in the vehicle fighting from the hatches and throwing hand grenades all around. So a very aggressive vehicle designed to assault enemy trenches, and may be exactly what Ukraine is looking for in this war to throw Russia out of Ukraine. So in Sweden since the 60s, since the 50s, we've had this tactic called stormning, meaning to storm, to assault, to charge. And what that means is that you hit an enemy position with mortars, artillery, close air support, and soften the enemy up right before you move in with your armored transports, in this case the PBV302s. And the shelling on the enemy position needs to be ongoing until you are almost on top of the enemy. For as long as possible, you keep shelling him while the PBVs and in the modern day CV90s advance on the enemy location, pinning the enemy in place, keeping him down. He can't shoot back at you. And then the indirect fire stops. Yeah, as you can imagine, you need proper coordination between the indirect fire crews and the assault element. And then you dismount anywhere between 50 to 0 meters from the enemy position. As crazy as it sounds, that has been the Swedish doctrine for armored warfare, mechanized warfare for 60 years, more than 60 years by now. And you drive basically straight up to the enemy, firing everything you have. And this is where the hatches come into play. You're also firing from the hatches, providing even more firepower to this assault. And pinning the enemy in place, keeping him down, and then you dismount, and you dismount straight into combat, basically at grenade throwing range. Very aggressive tactics, and this is what the PBV was used for, and then later on the CV90 kind of inherited those tactics. A bit tweaked by now, you know, military theories, tactical theory evolves every year, but this is basically the core of the Swedish doctrine. You overwhelm the enemy with massive indirect fire, move up at speed with the mechanized forces to perform this shock assault, stormtrooper assault basically, and dismount straight into the faces of the enemy and kill him at point blank range. So this is what the PBV was designed to do throughout the Cold War, storming. And now it will get a chance to do it for real down in Ukraine. And like I said, Ukraine has been utilizing the M113 quite successfully to conduct these sorts of maneuvers. And so it's going to be interesting to see if the PBV302 lives up to the hype. It performed exceptionally well in Yugoslavia, kept Swedish soldiers alive, responded with heavy firepower when needed, and in that conflict performed as intended on behalf of the UN. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it will perform in an actual all-out war zone. And I think that these vehicles will be very useful for Ukraine. So an unknown number of PBV302s will be delivered, but like I said, I suspect somewhere between 80 to 120 in the end. Who knows, maybe it will be 239 like that one other source said. But what is interesting is that we also have 230 CV9035s promised to Ukraine in a joint effort between Sweden, Denmark, and the Netherlands, providing these state-of-the-art CV90s with a powerful gun, anti-tank guided missiles, and active protection systems, and what have you, all fancy gadgets in it. This is state-of-the-art. It's going to be the most advanced vehicle in the war once they arrive sometime during 2025, these CV9035s. So, I mean, I guess we could speculate that Sweden will, with these two vehicles, provide something between 300 to 350 armored assault vehicles to Ukraine, designed for aggressive maneuvering, charging enemy positions, and dismounting troops at grenade throwing distance. Because remember, the CV90 was designed to replace the PBVs and inherited a lot of the tactics. So the CV90s were designed to perform those tactics that the PBV was intended to do. So we will see 60 years of Swedish assault doctrine be unleashed on Russia in 2025. And we will see if they hold up to the test. I mean, the CV9040 with the 40mm Bofors has been praised by Ukraine as the best IFV in the war, with an incredible track record so far. And so we will see what happens once these two vehicles arrive as well. The grandfather of Swedish armored fighting vehicles, basically. And here is the prodigy of the Swedish mechanized armored warfare family, the CV9035. So we'll see how they compare when they're put to the true test. But so far, the CV9040, armed with the 40mm Bofors, has been praised to no end by the Ukrainians and hailed as the best infantry fighting vehicle in the war so far. But I got a feeling that once the CV9035s arrive, they will push Daddy 40mm out of the way and take that first spot, being very impressive on the battlefield. But I got a slight feeling that potentially the old PBV302s will prove that you don't have to be new and fancy to be effective. The M113 has proven that it's very effective. The old Bradleys are extremely effective in this war. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting in the coming months to see when the PBVs arrive. And during 2025, we will see a lot of Swedish equipment rolling across the battlefields of Ukraine. And that will be it. I hope you found it interesting. Just a quick update on the PBV 302s going to Ukraine. I already made a video about it and didn't really add much to beyond that video, except that Ukraine has finally agreed to field these vehicles on the battlefield. But yeah, that's gonna have to be it. Enough of this bullshit. As always, go på marsch, Ukraine. Give them hell.